Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Roosters on Olentangy River Road in Columbus, Ohio. It is that time once again for the live show in the Horseshoe Lounge. It's going to be a fun, casual conversation in a fun, casual joint. This is Nicole Cox and Bill Landis. They have never appeared on the show.
I'm so excited.
We're going to make history.
I'm so
We're making
pumped.
history here today.
We're going to shake it up. And that fellow over there, that baby-faced young man,
Baby
Looks
Justin
so great.
face.
I love
Nicole
it.
likes it.
I like
the
it
only
so much
reason,
better
Nicole.
than all the facial hair. Yes.
What does that mean for me?
Hey,
and
yeah,
Bill?
you guys-
I don't, we're,
I don't-
I just
know.
feel
We're in
like you
trouble.
pull it off well. I feel like, and I do.
I don't pull it off well.
I thought, did it just
It was
fall
the
off when you were
creepy
skiing?
mustache.
Yeah, I was going so fast.
It was just the creepy mustache.
yeah, well,
I guess if you
I
did
like
the
that.
full
I like
thing,
I can give you that. The mustache tends to be a little creepy.
It
but,
is.
yeah, I was going so fast last week. It just all came off.
Okay. Did you have a good time?
I had a great time. Shredded some pow, man. I tell you what. It was, yeah. Did a little backcountry snowmobiling with pow surfing. It was crazy. But, yeah, good time. Missed you guys, though. Missed Roosters.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be back, and I've already tested some of this out. It's really good today, as it usually is.
Do you have some of these mac and cheese?
I had a mac and cheese bite, which if you come into tomorrow,
$3.
$3 mac and cheese bites all day long. Throw them up. Don't get in trouble, though. But, yeah,
Yeah, no.
$3 mac and cheese bites tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
At every Roosters in Ohio.
Come get them. Do you guys need to like have an introduction, Nicole, you and Bill? Or
And this is
No,
like,
we're all friends.
I
you
think
nervous
Bill's the
about it?
greatest.
Yeah.
I love listening to all of
I'm
you
just
guys
trying to
talk.
fill Bobby's shoes. I don't know if I can do that.
Well, I mean, how many innuendos can you make? The challenge.
That's what I was thinking to myself on the way over here.
Yeah.
you should have made a list. so you just knock them
where's
all
the
out.
line and how close should I get to it?
Yeah, he knows where to find that.
He does.
So, Jay-Z, what you missed last week, I know you were keeping up with it on the mountains.
Just trying to.
The Ohio State coaching staff had a full staff media day. Very rare, very informative, and I think that's where we've got to go with things that we learned, some takeaways for the Buckeyes, because they're just getting into mat drills, winter workouts. There's not a ton of other things going on. Spring ball is going to start 1 month from Appetizer Tuesday tomorrow,
Hey.
so we're getting close to that. What jumped out at you when you caught up with everything that was going on last Wednesday? What's something that you learned?
Well, a couple things. Offensively, just listening to Coach Fry talk about keeping guys at guards, not moving or seeing if anybody wants to go into center from there. I think that gives them an opportunity to have some experience around a new guy at center, which, I think can help, having guys that have been in there and a lot of times you get a new quarterback. I remember going out there. Nick Mangold was a great center. Like, hey, we're making a check here. Nicky, we good? You're like, yep, you got it. So it's just having some that you can bounce some questions off of, when you're at the line of scrimmage. I think that could be big for a new center. So that was interesting. I felt like he was kind of surprised and maybe a little angry about Whippler leaving. I don't know. I don't know if I'm reading into it or not, but that's just how I kind of took that.
That's Ryan Day had said that before. Justin Fry was like, "Well, you think at a development position like offensive line, you're not going to lose two guys after 3 years." Paris Johnson, they always thought that could happen.
Yeah.
Luke Whippler, probably.
Yeah, I think that was kind of like out of nowhere, so more of a surprise for him. Maybe not angry is the way to go, but and then just defensively reading up on what old LJ had to say, it looked like he was just trying to say, "I want my guys to be in my room and leave them alone. Let me work on them." So I don't know, what that is, but I kind of agree. You got these young guys who maybe bounced around a little bit as they were, freshman, sophomore years. Is it time to just put their hands in the ground and let them get after it? Because we haven't really had. Zach Harrison had a great year this past year, but we haven't had that Bosa type, or like if we could get somebody to really bring that pressure, every third down, or a couple times per series, I think that'd be huge. So maybe getting Jack into one spot, and maybe JT is the guy that kind of moves around a little bit more. I don't know, but there's going to be some questions, and I think spring ball is going to be a great time for them to mess around with that. And some of these young guys who maybe weren't ready, maybe this spring will be a time where they show them that they are, and then they can just keep their DNs in the same spot.
I feel like you were just trying to curry favor with Bill by talking about the offensive line
Well,
first.
I appreciated it.
You always got to think about the big guys up front. I know that it is 100%.
Yeah, I found I don't want to call it a disconnect because I'm not trying to suggest that there's dysfunction among the defensive coaches, but Larry very vehemently says he wants to keep Jack Sawyer at defensive end. So then I ask, all right, well, how about Caden Carey? You want to give him? Oh, no, he's a defensive end too. And then
Go down the line.
And then someone else asked Larry, like, well, does the Jack have to come out of the defensive line room? Oh, no, it can be a linebacker. And then you follow up with Jim Knowles. Jim, can the Jack be a linebacker? Like, I don't think so. I think we're going to keep those guys where they are. So someone's got to play the position. Maybe I can do it. Okay.
Volunteer?
They're going to figure that out at some point. Now,
I think that's what Bob's doing.
That's what he had today.
He's trying to get his COVID year. He's going to play the Jack.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's not a position they used a ton. It's a position that's been like very important to Jim Knowles' defense in the past. Maybe it's less important now. But they should probably figure out who's going to play it.
Well, it kind of like made a big deal of this position, and it just like didn't seem to jump off the screen at you last year, right? So they might be retooling it or whatever. Sorry to interrupt.
And it may be, Nicole, just a product of us covering Ohio State. There's not usually a lot of public disagreement from the coaching staff like that, and maybe they don't actually disagree about it, but
maybe they don't. Maybe it's just, kind of to throw all of us off.
Smoke screens, huh?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, because, as the coaching staff, you have to be on the same page. I feel like that's like the number one part of your job is all working together. And it is kind of funny that they would be going against each other to the public. So I feel like maybe that's just to throw us off.
Well, we spent all of last year talking about this new position in Jim Knowles' defense, probably too much. Mm-hmm. We didn't even we argued over what it was even going to be called. Was the Jack or the Leo or the who knows what, and that took up the entire offseason. Yeah. So this isn't a good way to get us to stop talking about it. To go argue over who
should be what. Yeah. What room should be taking over that?
Yeah. I found that odd because we've also spent way too much time talking about the defensive line rotation for some people's tastes. And it just, to me, it doesn't feel right.
Does it feel like that room is almost out here and everybody else is here, kind of? A little bit. A little bit? I mean, I'm not crazy, am I?
No.
I mean, when I'm just reading an article, I'm like, man, he's really trying to push it one way or the other. And, I guess I could understand that if I was a quarterback coach and they were trying to make my quarterback play receiver or tight end or something. I'm like, give him back to me. Yeah, I need to work on it. But I
think that's the push and pull with Larry Johnson's been doing this so long. He's widely viewed as a legendary defensive line coach, and you have Jim Knowles coming in. He's making $2 million to run his defense, and I think he wants to give the proper deference to someone who's been doing it for a very long time. But I don't. It feels like it's working independently, to your point, Jay-Z, the defensive line from the rest of the group. And that's not a way forward. Like, you can't have Roosters Catering be like, we're just going to go over here and we're going to do our own thing. We're going to make different wing sauces that you can't get in the rest of
it. It'd be ridiculous, right?
That wouldn't work. Like,
that wouldn't work.
Your company has to all be working in alignment.
Well, and you say that, and I was reading, some on, James coming back. I'm sure you guys touched on that last. Well, maybe he wasn't here by the time you guys had this.
Week.
Yeah, last week.
He talked to us.
Well, it's just like, him talking about how, I'm here to learn how my boss wants it done, boss being Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator. I don't want to step on toes. I want to teach it the right way. And that's kind of how, and that's a new guy in coaching, I understand, but it's kind of how everybody should be, right? Yeah. Defense coordinator tells you how he wants things to be done, and maybe that's just harder for, an old timer, or I don't want to call him an old timer, old school coach.
He's 70.
Yeah, he's up there. He's been around the block.
He's not a spring chicken.
Yeah. Not a spring chicken. So, it's just funny, the different perspectives, because, you read one article, it's like, man, okay. And then you have a new, fresh guy coming in saying, well, I got to learn how this is done here. I want to make sure I'm coaching it the same way and making sure I'm coaching these guys the best to where they can go out on the field and produce the best.
Yeah. I do think whatever, in the end, Jim Knowles wants is what will happen.
Well, yeah.
And it's fine at this time of year, too, to do some experimentation with that. But the big thing for Larry was Jack Sawyer not being stuck in two worlds. And he didn't say he should only be a defensive end. He said if he's a Jack, then he's a Jack, and he should just do that rather than try to do both. Because I think there's a sense with Larry, and I think for us too that watch Jack play, that he was never quite the player we thought he would be. I think because for the entire season he was trying to do two jobs at once. Yeah,
that is very difficult, and I can relate that to our positions here. When I got into my position, I still worked in the store as well, and it was great because it kept me grounded and I understood it. But balancing two, you can't give 100%. You really have to be on one job to fully do it well. You just can't do both at 100% capacity. So, I mean, I think that's in anything, truly.
Yeah, yep.
So,
and especially with this role for Jack Sawyer, I mean, they were changing his body, and I don't think that it worked the way that they tacked on a bunch of weight all at once to try and play that position and hold up more against the run or play in the middle of the line. Like it didn't connect, and I do. You have to decide, because it is becoming a critical point now. Jack Sawyer has been here 2 years. Yeah. This is the sort of the juncture point. Mm-hmm. He could stay much longer. I don't think anybody envisioned that with the 5-star tools that he brought and that athleticism. So he's going to have to focus and specialize, and I think that's an interesting part of this dynamic. Nicole, who else stood out with you? I felt like when I was standing there listening to Keenan Bailey last week.
Yes, yes.
This guy.
Quit taking my person. Quit taking my person. No, So the coaches, there was a lot to say, a lot of information, and it's still so early, but something that really stood out to me was Keenan Bailey being, now he's the new tight end coordinator.
Tight end's coach, but you can coordinate too.
Same. In my mind.
He coordinates that tight end room. I liked it.
Yeah.
His card says tight end coordinator.
I think he should have. Yeah.
I just love the fact, and this is where I think the most successful people, this is kind of a characteristic of them, that he was working, they were kind of making up positions to keep him there because they knew he was valuable. Mm-hmm. And he worked the crap hours in the not office, like in a closet. He might not even have had an office. He might have been walking around with just a bag with his stuff in it,
It was a closet. He didn't used to have that. You're right. He did used to have to walk around just with the backpack.
Yeah, just find, the community table to work at. But he put in the effort. Yeah. He was never too good to do that. And he worked so hard, and look how it worked out. Like, he was promoted, and he still looks at his job as the same. It's not like he's, on a power trip or arrogant about it. I just want to be here to make the Buckeyes the best.
I thought, when he said that, and I've known Keenan for a long time now, but when he was saying it out loud, and I said, these coats are about to get out there, and Nicole's going to cry.
Yep. Oh,
My job is the same.
He is pulling at her heartstrings.
My job is to help the Buckeyes.
Yes.
Yep.
My job is to beat the team up north.
And putting the effort in. I mean, doing all of that, looking at everyone else who has an office, and you're sitting there with your backpack on a made-up couch table situation, and you just keep doing it. You keep plugging at it because you believe so much in that position. I mean, I'm so excited for him.
Pretty important unit for Ohio State as well. Kate Stover coming back, Joe Royer, G. Scott. They want to play 2 tight ends a lot. We'll see if they're able to do that.
Yeah, I like it. And I mean, to be honest, Stover was better than I thought he was going to be last year. I thought he was a little bit more athletic than I was expecting. Just making the hand-eye coordination, he was able to go out and make some big plays last year. So, he's going to be a big player. If we can get that second tight end that we can really rely on or stay healthy, they do love going to that, and I think that could be dangerous because, I mean, he was a player for us, and, that last Michigan game where, a couple, like, you expected him to make those plays, it's going to eat at that kid this entire year. So he's going to be even better next. I mean, that can be a really exciting room, especially with a new coach, a lot of excitement there.
Yeah, he'll be healthier than he was at the end of the year, which I think if you watched him and saw like his blocking slipped off just a little bit. Yeah. I think that was injury stuff. If he's healthy and builds on what he was last year, I like Joe Royer a lot. I know Ohio State likes Joe Royer a lot too. If those are your top 2, and then you have a G. Scott or a Bennett Christian, Sam Hart, one of those 3 kind of works his way up to be your third tight end. That's a pretty solid position group. I think Keenan enters a situation where. Because of what he's returning, that room can really take off, and that's not going to happen automatically. He has to kind of tap into that. But I think he is a guy that can do that. The thing that strikes me most about Keenan, and you talked to him mostly prior to last week, was all sort of like, random conversations off to the side, not formal interview settings. Mm-hmm. He's incredibly sharp, and he's incredibly driven. And I think sometimes, I don't mean this to come off the wrong way, but I think sometimes people get put into positions where you think to yourself, like, well, why is that guy there? Like, Keenan's never been a position coach anywhere, and you think, like, well, maybe he should have had to have been a position coach somewhere else before he was a position coach at Ohio State. That's all well and good. I don't necessarily believe that. But the one thing that I do believe is that he will not, like, get that opportunity and waste it. I think he will maximize his potential at that position, and in doing so, maximize the tight end position for Ohio State.
I think that was what was really striking, just to go back to the Larry and Jim Knowles thing. Like, Keenan Bailey is so aligned with what Ryan Day wants, or all the other position coaches that he worked with, which is all of them. Started doing some stuff with the running backs and Tony Alford, worked hand in hand with Brian Hartline for a while. Last year they had him get some experience with the offensive line, and he popped over there and worked with Justin Fry and Mike Salini. Like, he's worked with every single position, and that's where the value, he created the value for himself that Ohio State didn't want him to leave. But you didn't hear anything from those guys on that side of the ball. It was like, I don't think that they agree on the best way for this offense. Like, also, it's not broken. It's the best offense in the country, I know. So you probably don't want to disrupt that flow. But,
I agree with that.
Okay. Sunday's the Super Bowl.
It is, and you guys, we have a Super Bowl special.
Hey.
Make sure to call and place your carryout orders for your Super Bowl party at home to have them ready for pickup between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. and you will get 20% off your order.
Hey,
so
I like that.
It's a win-win. It helps you, and it helps us that our fryers and kitchen aren't bombarded at game time.
What time is the Super Bowl? Anybody?
6:30.
6:30. Okay.
Nicole, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Oh, guys, I'm just not that interested since the Bengals didn't go. Sorry.
Nobody at this table is interested in it.
I just think
I'm very invested.
We need an underdog to go. We need an underdog to make it there. And then it's super exciting. Like last year, it was just so exciting,
Well, the fix was in.
the script was there, yeah. I mean, we knew.
I mean, you missed Berm's rant about the officiating.
Oh, golly, I bet I did.
I don't know. I don't know if you viewed it the same way, but Bengals Birds would have been a much more, I don't know. It wouldn't have been quite so fun and casual, I think, once Berm gets in here.
Would have been heated.
Yeah.
Heated.
Yeah, I didn't think about Berm. I didn't think about Berm last week after that. I bet he was in the hurt box.
I walked in and gave him a hug.
Yeah, he probably needed that, Nicole.
He's the first person I thought of. I was like, man.
Well, at least we can all rally behind the Eagles now.
Hey, all right, fly, Eagles, fly.
Right.
Isn't that what it is,
right.
or something like that?
Yes, sir.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
All right, well, Nicole, again, has to go talk about the Ohio State basketball program with Chris Holtman. You didn't turn the tide last week, Nicole.
Hey,
It's
I
going to be a
didn't,
tough talk.
but, I think that maybe I'm not quite sure what's going on. I think he's a phenomenal. Listen,
That's about all you can say about that.
I think he's a great coach. I really, really do. I love the vibe he brings. He's just a wonderful person and great. I think that sometimes you just get in a funk.
Can't make the ball go through the hoop, right?
Hey, that happened to my son's team yesterday. I swear. It rolled in and then came back out. It was just unreal. So that does happen. But I feel that teams can just get in a funk, and then it's like the Michigan game, and then you start panicking and you're like, we got to get out of it. And then, so hopefully they can just find their way.
Sooner would be better.
Yeah, it's getting to that point. It's either
11 and 12 in February. That's a long road back to any form of postseason outside
It's okay.
of the Big Ten
We
tournament.
got our next game.
Hey,
next two at home.
Hey, next two at home. Get that place rocking.
That's right. Nicole will be there doing her part, of course. She's get this turnaround. She's going to go talk to Chris Holtman and get out of here. And Berm's going to join us on a fun, casual conversation at Roosters. It's a fun, casual joy.
Roosters has been so fortunate. We just want to be able to give some of that back to the community.
They donate to organizations that are near and dear to their heart, and we're so fortunate to have been with Roosters now for a long time.
They always go above and beyond to help support our foundation to further help veterans.
It's just a wonderful feeling to know that Roosters supports the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer.
All the folks at Roosters are just genuinely kind folks, and they want to make a difference.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
All right, welcome back into Roosters. Berm's here.
Hello. Hey, Berm.
The show got a whole lot uglier.
Well,
Well,
at least Jay-Z's
yeah,
here.
I shaved too. So Nicole says it looks better.
Yep. See,
I'm doing my part.
I don't even recognize him anymore. That used to be, he was always clean
I was
shaven.
a mountain man. This time last year, I had a beard down to here.
Yeah, that was my favorite version.
Yeah,
Jay-Z.
that's a lot of work. I didn't want to do it again this year.
Berm, what was your number one takeaway from the coaching staff last week?
I want to be clear. I didn't listen to anything you guys said.
Okay.
For this, so if I am repeating anything, to me, it's just that the quarterback competition is going to be
We didn't even touch on that.
a full on halvesies. Go
Halvesies,
at it. Go at it. I think
It's always what they say. I'm
Yeah.
going to be interested to see. Well, I mean, I've been through that before.
Yeah, I don't know
Yes.
if I, I don't know
We'll
if
get
I
to that.
believe.
It's more
I
like
don't know
60-40.
I don't know if I believe that that's how it's going to be. I do believe. I mean, when they start spring practice, there's going to be someone taking the first reps, and it's going to be Kyle McCord. So at that point, I mean, there is a psychological side of it where all of a sudden it's like, okay, that's the guy that's out there first. And so I wonder how much or how long that lasts, where they're trying to rotate reps evenly. But that to me is the important thing when you're dealing with the quarterback room. Ryan Day was very clear on Wednesday. He's looking for guys to make plays, extend plays, and sometimes you read that into that and be like, is he talking? Is he calling out Devin Brown saying that this, or is he saying, hey, Kyle can do this too? We talked about that on Snap Judgments last week. Like, that to me is the interesting thing, because the season will go as the quarterbacks go, so I don't really think much about anything else at this point.
What if they start in a Wildcat?
Oh, jeez.
Who would be the Wildcat back?
JT Tuimoloau.
Oh, my.
Oh, golly.
We're getting spicy.
Oh, hold on now. LJ wouldn't like that.
No, that's true.
Leave him alone. Yeah, leave him alone.
Leave him at defensive
I
end.
need his hand in the dirt.
Jay-Z, so as you say, it's 60-40.
Well, I mean, when
Sometimes
when that happens, you know, they like to give you the lip service of, well, it's not going to be this or that or the other. But like to your point, whoever goes out there on the first day of spring ball is going to feel like they have the upper hand.
Yeah.
You know, especially the guy who's been here longer, who's been through more. So it's definitely a strange thing, because it's never 50-50. Somebody's always feeling slighted after a day of practice, or I got stuck with the 2s or 3s, and that's whatever.
Yep.
That stuff is real, and it happens. Now, I will go as far as saying, like, the quarterback room is way different from when I was there.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like these guys are all rooting for each other, and nice brotherhood, and it wasn't that way when I was in college. I mean, there was multiple times where being, it was what it was back then. So it's different, but it's a mind game, and you just gotta, as a guy in that competition, just go day by day.
How much of that
control what you can?
How much of that, going back to 2004, right? Start of that season, you and Troy are jockeying back and forth. How much of that separating in the locker room is just you guys peacocking and trying to be like, I'm the guy, versus an actual, like, you were put into the situation because the coaches were providing reason to have animus? What was the crux of that? Because I think it's interesting to people. The mentality of quarterbacks hasn't changed. These guys are something is still the same as it was back then. So what was it really that was?
When I came in, I was going to be the quarterback in my class, and then it turned into, we're taking Troy as the last guy in the class, and day before, which they didn't tell. I was going to be the quarterback in the class, and then he's coming in as an athlete. You're not going to feel it, type thing. So I was more of the opposite, where they told me it wasn't going to be 50-50, and then it was 50-50 the entire time. And at some point in time, it's just, and I think this maybe started with Urban, and I don't 100% know because I'm not in those rooms, but it probably became a point where they started just being honest with these kids. He's ahead of you. Yeah. This is why. Look at the film. We're watching this. Back then, it was, a lot of mind games, and just, I never knew if I was going to be the guy. I knew I'm splitting every rep I took from the day I got there 50-50, with a guy in my class. So I think they kept it more around just to push both of us in a way. But really, we went in our junior year, went into the Texas game that whole week. Nobody knew who the starter was going to be until Friday. And it's like, oh, Justin, you're starting. I'm like, all right, let's go do this, but it's just like, that was our entire, I didn't learn I was going to be the starter my sophomore year until we went home, in between camp, when you're allowed to go watch your high school play or whatever. And it was announced at the high school game that night. Yeah. I had, they just kept us in the dark with so much. So I think what you're seeing, and I could be wrong with the Urban thing, but I feel like they were just, I think this is what it is.
Social media played a huge role in that, because in 2002, when you were being recruited or signed in the 2001 recruitment, 2002 signing class, like, social media didn't exist. So it wasn't like you and Troy could text each other and be like, hey, this is what they're telling me. This is what I'm hearing. That's the way it is now. These kids.
Well, they did have phones, bro.
Yeah,
they could text each
we
other.
did.
Not really.
Well, no, there was no texting.
The difference.
They had cups with strings in it.
You had to pay 10 cents a text, though.
The distance between Massillon and Glenville is like 1,700 miles. There's no way those guys were talking.
Not a chance.
Yeah.
The reality of it is that now you can't. So you can't lie to kids anymore in the recruiting process, which is a good thing. But at the same time, for coaches, I'm sure they're like, oh, shoot. Now I have to be
100%. Yeah,
I have to be honest.
But I think that's also, players can respect that a little bit more. If my coaches back then would have been like, hey, this is where you're at, and this is why, this is what, this is this. Okay. I know what I have to work on to be that guy, instead of just always in the dark and not knowing. So I think that's a big thing that's changed. And also there's the portal.
Yeah.
Back then, once I lost that job, what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, do I go down, Montana State and try my luck there my senior year? Or, do I, stick around and see if something happens, But, so that changes things as well. These guys are just trying to get the most experience, get the best coaching they can for a couple of years. It doesn't work out, they're going somewhere else. But it's a stinky thing. I mean, it's great competition. Every competitor on the football team loves that aspect of it, but you also love knowing you're the guy.
When you go,
and it makes things a little bit easier because you're not stressing over every single throw, over every single miss, or this or that, the other during practice, because you know that that's being graded and you're going to be based off of.
So this current situation feels a little bit like 2004, right? You have the quarterback. I mean, obviously, quite a difference between C.J. Stroud and Craig Krenzel. But the reality is you are coming off of
one won a national championship.
Oh,
2 years of a guy who's the starter. You have
CJ, I'm so sorry.
2 years of the guy who's the starter.
I don't mean it.
Two guys coming in who've been waiting to play. 2004, you're the starter when the season starts. When did you feel it changing? When did you know it was changing? And what was the dynamic? What got different?
That was weird because I dislocated my shoulder in that Iowa game in the first series.
Thankfully.
That
one got ugly quick.
Well, it did, but I played that first half. I finished it, so that sucks.
That one got ugly quick. You know the rest of this.
Yeah, so that one stunk. I couldn't, of course, do anything with my shoulder after halftime. And then that's when, for a few weeks, I couldn't even throw the ball. So that was when the change. And then all of a sudden, I could go against Michigan. They didn't use me. Troy had a great game, and at that point in time, all right, I know what this means. He went out and had a great game against Michigan at the end of the year, and that's kind of when I saw the writing on the wall.
And then you have to start the next year.
Well, and then I'm going into. I mean, if you want to hear the story,
we do.
Please.
I mean, I'm after bowl practice. I remember standing in the hallway waiting to go in and talk to Tress about, hey, just lay it out for me. What's my future? I know this just happened. I still want to play football. I don't want to sit behind this the rest of my career. And him and Gene and Troy came out of that meeting who I was waiting on, and he just said, hey, let's just wait and have this conversation later. And it's, I'm, okay, my coach told me to go, basically, so I'm like, okay. And then I get a call 2 days later. They, oh, hey, you're starting the Alamo Bowl. So I'm like, and you get the next one the next year. So it's like they hooked me. Like, hey, you're not going anywhere, guy.
You can't leave.
And you can't leave because Beckman's gray shirting. We can't blow that gray shirt on, the Alamo Bowl. We don't have another quarterback. But then as me, the idiot I was like, oh, I got a chance to go make this mine, again.
And renegotiate your NIL deal.
Well, he's there, So, yeah, exactly. But, so it was like, that's kind of how it happened for me because I was ready to I don't mean to say I was ready to leave and I had, people wanting me to come, knocking down my door or anything.
Was there tampering? Was USC calling?
No, yeah, exactly.
Montana State was tampering.
There was none of that, but it was just, hey, what do I, what am I looking at here? Is it going to be better for me to just go somewhere else? I want to play, that sort of thing. So that's how it happened. And then I got hooked into being there my junior year. And, the night before the Texas game, I found out I'm starting and, that went the way it went and you don't play anymore.
It feels like that must make it, I don't know, more difficult for you to watch quarterback battles like this.
Yeah.
You empathize with the situation.
Well, that's why I'll 100% be a fan of Joe Burrow the rest of my life. Because think about if he doesn't leave. Dwayne goes out and throws for 50 touchdowns that next year. Whatever happens, Joe doesn't play at Ohio State. He's sitting here. He's got my seat right now.
Maybe he gets replaced by Justin Fields next year.
Well, exactly.
Because at that point, Ohio State would have.
It's real.
Ohio State would have had to bring someone else in regardless.
Yeah,
and there's a potential that he could have.
And Justin Fields was number one player. They would not have said no, we're good. They would have said, yeah, come on over. So I love that, and I love the opportunity that this has created for these guys. Because everybody wants to say, well, you just compete and quarterback, you get one. Yeah. It's not like you're rotating, and if you are rotating quarterbacks, you're an idiot. I've always hated that as well. But it's the only real position on the field. You can't, if you're not the starter, you're typically not going to play. I know the offensive line is kind of that way as well, but they still could rotate, or you could get on special teams, or you could do something else. Like quarterback,
the live show here at Roosters is never scripted. So now I'm just going to ask. Your family had a really close relationship with Jim Tressel because your brother played at Youngstown State.
Oh, gosh, you're going to give me a
So why How hard?
I'm sorry, Jay-Z.
No,
I don't know.
I'm in this.
We've never gone down this road, so I figure why not? How hard was that for you? Because Tress was your guy. Like, you come to Ohio State because Tress takes the job. Like, why? How hard?
Yeah,
was that?
it was probably harder. It wasn't like Tress got the job and I'm like, heck yeah. I'm in. As a youngster, watching my brother go through Youngstown State, I kind of felt some fishy things, some stuff I didn't like as a younger brother went on at Youngstown State.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I was a huge, I hope he gets that job at Ohio State type guy. It was probably more later on the road. Just my dad always loved Ohio State. My brother loved Tress.
Right.
And I'm like, well, he just played for him for 4 years. He loves him. Maybe I don't know what I think I know.
The real is, right.
So I'm like, all right, it is what it is. So I let that, what young kid's not going to listen to their dad and their older brother who they grew up idolizing and, wanted to be like. So, that was probably more of it. It wasn't a day. I'll tell you the real story. I was in my high school coach's kitchen the day Tress got the job. And I legit remember saying, I don't remember much. I've had a few concussions. But I remember just being like, well, I'm not going to Ohio State. I mean, that was my attitude at that point in time. And that was, a snap reaction, whatever. But then as, we went through the process and, he's a great recruiter. He knows everything about our family and, that sort of thing.
Ohio
and
guys go to Ohio State.
Dad loved Ohio State. Brother loved him as a coach. And it just that's how it all kind of came together for me. But, yeah, it wasn't a,
Was it a love fest?
No, it wasn't. And so that made it 4 years later even worse at times. When I'm sitting there and I'm having to spend my entire day next to him.
Yeah.
Signaling in plays during practice, all that stuff. Like, it was a lot of fun at times. But it was also, at times, it wasn't.
We've never gone down that road, so I appreciate you, engaging.
Yeah, I mean, it goes a long ways back. I mean, that's a long time
I just
ago.
think there's a lot of parallels between what we're heading into this spring.
There could be, and that's, when I started seeing, like, it always just blew my mind when, you had like JT and Cardale and all those guys who just seemed like they were best friends.
Best friends, yeah.
And it's just like, I remember coming out of the train table and, Simon Fraser like, you probably don't want to go out there right now. Troy's like yelling for you, like just stupid stuff like that. And it's like, we just, that just was how it was back then. And now nothing ever happened. And, our senior year, once the dust settles and I'm in my role, he's the starter, he's the Heisman candidate, like, we had a better relationship, and we have a better relationship today if I were to run into him. Yeah. But when we were in the middle of it, like, we were button heads. We were not each other's fans like it seems these players are nowadays. Which it's
Ohio State's done a very good job of that because they're not running into situations where guys are transferring. That does happen.
Yeah,
like Joe Burrow, of course. Tate Martell, Bill's all-time favorite Ohio State quarterback.
That's right.
Some of that situation is going to be avoidable, and it'll happen in the future. But they've retained a lot of them, and you still see, as you mentioned, Jay-Z, like Cardale and JT and Braxton are still, playing intramural basketball together, best friends, and hanging out. And you look at, I don't think there was ever any animosity between Dwayne and Joe. They're in a tough situation, and they were competing, and they had to make decisions that wound up in the best interest of each of them. And, you go down the road, I talked to Kyle and Devin about this, and it's one thing to say it publicly, but I think I've been around these guys for a decade that they mean it, that they do get along well, and that they're not like whoever wins. I think that they're going to shake hands and be like, "All right, well, now what? Now what? What do I do?"
Well, and you learn that from the future, or from the guys that came before you, right? So when I got there, like Craig and I didn't talk for like the first 6 months of me being at Ohio State, unless it was something they were coming at me for being the young guy and the big time recruits. So maybe but by the time he left, we were good friends. I did his senior tackle talk.
Yep. And
I even said, I think when I first got here, nobody would have thought I'd be giving this guy's, senior tackle talk, because that's just kind of how that room was at the time, I guess. But it's changed. So I think these younger guys see the relationships that these guys have had and how you can make it work and not having to be, a dick to everybody all the time. And, so they see that and they continue that. And I think it's great. Sorry.
He just realized
Richard.
what you said.
Yeah.
But how much of that did you think because these guys now just spend so much time together in the Woody, then you guys weren't there 70 hours a day like they
Yeah,
are,
I mean,
right?
I mean, that is all different as well. And I mean, and like you mentioned, there's the social media, and now, granted, I called a lot of guys coming out. I helped recruit. You know, I don't remember how many guys I called, 20, 30 different dudes. But that's calling from a landline in my home in Orville
The white
to
pages out?
Florida. Well, yeah, you know, I found there's some innovative ways of finding those numbers to some guys. But, you know, I'm calling people I've never even met or talked to, or they have no idea who I am. And that was that. You know,
Where
it's not
the
like
hell is Orville?
well, yeah. I mean, it's not like they were going on my social media page like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, okay, yeah, I know him now. Or we going back and forth on there. It's like, can I speak to so-and-so? And like somebody on their line, like, who is
Can I
this?
please speak to Christopher Gamble?
Yeah, well, you know, it's just like, I mean, there were some crazy ones, but especially calling down like South Florida. It's like, I forget the one. Anyhow, I mean, it was different, and it's good different because these kids can have relationships and really get to know each other before they come in, and you know, and
have to try to ruin each other's lives.
Yeah,
That's right.
basically.
Yeah. I don't know what happened with JT and Cardale and those guys, because you wouldn't think, like, I think it's very easy to say, like, right now, Ryan Day understands the psyche of these quarterbacks, and he's a younger guy who's not terribly far removed from playing the position. I think he can tap into something with these quarterbacks to kind of avoid some of the stuff we're talking about. But he wasn't here when those guys in 2015 were going through that.
Right.
And like Urban Meyer doesn't strike me as someone who would cultivate a room where everyone is not at each other's throat all the time.
A lot of ELE energy in that room.
Yeah. So maybe that speaks to those guys having a special personality trait, I think. But they did, I think, lay the foundation for what Ohio State has now. And it's not to say, like, one of the two guys we're talking about is going to leave the program at some point. I would think that's just the reality of things now. But even if they
They
do,
both are.
Eventually they both are. Eventually,
That's
they both are.
100% guarantee.
One of them is more than likely going to play as quarterback somewhere else before they go off to the NFL. But that's not an indictment on like the culture of that room. That's more like the nature of the position now. Because I do think that somehow, some way, Ryan Day and I guess Corey Dennis gets some credit too. Have built their room in a way where like that dynamics just does not exist.
How much
I'm not sure if more than likely is the right way to phrase that. If Kyle does keep the job throughout spring, like, I don't know that is an incentive for Devin Brown to leave. I've said that before. Maybe I'm
wrong. Go out and see how Kyle does.
I don't think.
I think things stay the same if Kyle wins the job.
Yeah, but I also don't. As much as Ohio State would like Kyle McCord, if he wins the job to be one and done, I'm not going to assume he is.
Yeah, okay.
And then like, does Devin stick around for 2 years? I don't know.
Yeah.
More than likely, he's probably too strong, but
No, I mean, you
quite possibly. I don't
you
know.
could definitely be right about that. I don't mean it to be an argument. I think that.
Well, in today's college football world, you just don't see guys waiting, saying, all right, I could sit for 2 years and then play. It's like, no, I want to go play right now. You know, I'm on the clock. I want to get to the NFL.
Well, I think that Bill's point is valid. That I think that's the assumption that Kyle McCord gets this job after 2 years of experience and is in position to go play in the NFL at the end of the year. And that is probably the toughest task out of all of this. And that's probably something that needs to be more strongly considered when looking at the future of the room, because doing something like Dwayne Haskins did in 1 year as a starter is incredibly rare.
Yes. Yeah.
And only playing 1 year of starting football at quarterback, there's a lot of evidence that getting 2 years as a quarterback before you go to the NFL is much more valuable. So the more that I think about what you said, the more true that probably is.
Yeah.
But that's what
Yeah,
a lot to process, especially if you're in charge of that room.
I also wonder from just a psyche standpoint for the guys, for the JT and Cardale, Braxton, that era, how different or how unique it was because those guys are all from different classes. And you and Troy being in the same class, I think, was a different sort of
every single day
approach.
we saw each other, and it was
Cardale was originally in the 2010 class. You know what I mean? And then signed till the 2012 class, but then you have Braxton in 2011, JT's not till 2013. So there's all these sort of
they all had their time of being the guy,
and adults by the time they had this battle in 2015. It wasn't like
Braxton was hurt too. It wasn't
Braxton wasn't even in the quarterback conversation.
Well, injury. I mean, JT went down, and that's that's how it works.
But again, it's like Dwayne gets the job pretty much handed to him because he had the game against Michigan. Troy had the game against Michigan, which pretty much took you out of the. Cardale won the national championship with 3 games that are historically great. So it all these situations have these like weird little anomalies that happen that force someone to be the guy. And Kyle and
like
Devin,
Joe breaking his hand.
So what could happen this spring where
Kyle and Devin, as we stand at it now, are in this from a pretty even spot, and I think that makes it the most interesting quarterback battle at Ohio State since 2004. I mean, honestly, it's,
when is I was gonna say because like no, there's really Kyle has been here longer and has the Akron start. Okay, but that's not monumental extenuating circumstances, and it's been a while since we've been in that position, right? Where like the slate is truly, for all intents and purposes, blank, and Ryan Day can kind of do whatever he wants, and there's not this thing hanging out there like, oh, what about like Kyle McCord didn't go beat Michigan or go really go beat anyone of note. So on some level, that makes it more interesting for us. Maybe Ryan Day wishes he had that.
Yeah.
You don't think he wants that blank canvas to go into a spring?
It's an interesting thing. I mean, quarterback competitions, when you have something like this, I mean, there's nothing more interesting going on a football team. Now, I mean, there's more important things. What happens with the offensive line? Because you put a new quarterback back there, you want to make sure you're giving him time. You don't want him to have to run around like his hair's on fire. It's kind of what I ran into. I mean, we had a defensive end switch during camp and start right tackle for me that year.
Yeah.
About a week and a half after he started playing right tackle. He had never done it before.
Larry won't let that happen.
And I wasn't. Well, yeah, he's not giving up any more DNs. But that's a big thing. So that offensive line being short up, you have the weapons around them, but it starts there. And one with getting a center. I mean, these guys have never taken a snap from whoever's going to play center this year.
Right. One of the things I think that's interesting about the dynamic and the psychology of the quarterback battle now versus, again, 18 years ago is that
dating me, Berm.
Because these guys are all
these guys better check on me tonight.
Because these guys are all pretty much homogenized, right? They're all the same. There isn't that divide in the team where it's like, oh, we want this guy. Because these guys are all the same personality pretty much. They're all the same talent level, essentially.
What? Same personality between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown?
I think that they're all viewed the same by the guys on their team. It's not 2012, for example, you had a very young, talented Braxton Miller who was sometimes not always wanting to give everything he had to his teammates, right? And then you had someone like Kenny Guyton. So you have Kenny Guyton win a couple games in that year, and there were guys on that team clamoring for Kenny Guyton to be the starter over Braxton Miller. I don't think that would be the case in a spring like this one, is what I'm saying. I think that these guys are all, because they all spend so much time together, they all sort of develop the same personality, and it's sort of homogenized as it is. You and Troy are very different people.
Very different quarterbacks,
very different
100%. Yeah.
So I think that there's a less of a risk of having that big divide in the locker room.
But that there was one in 2017.
What?
There was a divide.
Well, there were certainly guys who thought Dwayne gave them a better chance to win games. I mean, I that's different. I mean, I think once that was you had years of body of work to look at, and you saw what Dwayne did in practice versus what JT had done for the previous 4 years, and you could start to say, hey, maybe it's time to move forward. This is not the same situation, I don't think, because there's no, as Bill attested to, there's no, moment to go, aha.
There is no aha moment. Well, I mean, they could, Tate, you just turn him loose in the red zone package.
Heck yeah.
What could have been?
What could have been?
Season-long red zone package. You guys know he won 10 for 10 against Rutgers?
That's next week's episode.
the 10 for 10 story? They're going to make an incredible 30 for 30.
30 for 30 out of that?
10 for 10.
Bill's
Where did he end up? Was he in UNLV when he
went to UNLV?
After Miami.
After Miami, yeah.
Football, though.
That was his last stop, though, right?
Yeah. If I wrote a book about the 10 for 10 game and each chapter was one of the 10 throws, you think people would buy that?
I'll read it.
I know at least one person who would.
Me.
All right. Well, we got to that point where we're writing Tate Martell books. That probably tells you.
10 for 10.
I don't know how fun or casual the conversation was for Jay-Z, but
hey, whatever.
We got through it. We're
18 years ago.
I think it's important.
I can't believe I've never talked to Berm about that.
I think it's important to get that out.
100%.
The psychology of the
I don't think he was hanging out with you enough on the cruise last year.
Well, he must not have been.
Those stories get a lot better after some daiquiris.
I don't believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Daiquiris.
Can we get some daiquiris?
Yeah, daiquiris.
One more round of daiquiris, please.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's coming up anyway. Jay-Z's getting in.
Oh, yeah.
Ready. That's why he shaved.
That's why I shaved, and that's why I'm eating these cheesy fries.
That's right.
Getting ready for cruise.
And tomorrow,
and mac and cheese
eating
bites.
some mac and cheese bites.
Yes.
$3 on Appetizer Tuesday. We appreciate Nicole Cox for having us in to Roosters in the Horseshoe Lounge. Jay-Z, Bill, Berm, I'm Austin. Thanks for joining us again. We'll see you next Monday right back here at Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint.